All right, we are live. And to set the mood correctly, I got the proper attire.
Ah, yes.
Now, one of my claims to fame is that was my idea for a t-shirt.
Yeah.
So I want to start everything out. We'll go with Scott. Tell us a yar.
I'm Scott Rouse. I'm a body language expert and analyst. I train law enforcement in the military in interrogation and body language.
Barnes.
Robert Barnes, constitutional civil trial lawyer, who would have more success if I'd hired Scott more often in my trial.
And Viva.
Dave Frei, for anybody who doesn't know me, lawyer, YouTuber guy, and I should probably stop wearing a t-shirt in streams, but we do the vlog.
Hey, don't hide your light under the barrel there. Earlier, he did wear a button-down shirt when he was on with Alan Dershowitz himself. So well done.
My father, my wife, it was my father called me up this morning. He says, what are you going to wear for Alan? It's like, well, I'm just going to wear my vlog because I want it in there. He's like, maybe you should wear something else. And then I ran it by my wife and she said, yeah, maybe for the first time, a button-up shirt. And that's it. Back to the t-shirt.
Trouble good. I mean, especially if everybody hasn't seen it yet, you really should. Dershowitz is a major fan of Viva here and really, really, really is quite impressed with you and deservedly so.
It was quite a surprise, but anyway,
that's fantastic.
Yeah, it was great. And Robert, there's going to be a stream with you, me, and Dershowitz, and it might be the O.J. Simpson special, but we'll see how it turns out.
Oh, God. You guys do know that I've had two people tied to O.J. Simpson, and the third one, all about the Glenn Rogers and people who know him on death row and all that good stuff.
Yeah. I mean, I have my own reasons to think OJ is innocent or not guilty of that particular crime. Maybe innocent's broad word. At least by the evidence presented at the trial. I thought they did a great job picking juries, and the prosecutor played into the wrong images, and the defense did Johnny was fantastic, one of the best all-time defenses. F. Lee Bailey was okay, could have been a lot better. The Innocence Project guy was very good. Shapiro was so frankly. But Dershowitz had a potential role and did have a role in that, and one of his great famous cases. I mean, probably the Connecticut case probably even more famous. But I've read almost all of his cases. His briefings are brilliant. Just strategies are brilliant. Guys just at a different level.
I can't wait to see it because it'll be like two just brains colliding.
Yeah, and I don't think he'll go as crazy as Uncivil Law did about my standing position, which is an all-time classic. Maybe Scott could analyze that. I think if Scott analyzed the body language, he would say, that's sincere anger. That's not faked anger. That's sincere anger. But with that's another story for another day.
Well, hey, good news on that. We are going to have a discussion about standing tomorrow. Viva's going to come on with Nate the lawyer and help me understand what the hell standing is. So that's going to be tomorrow at noon. So everybody, hit that red button, that subscribe. So that way you'll see it when it comes down with the bell, all that good stuff.
I wish we could force the justices to undergo the behavior panel's body language analysis when they announce their standing decision, because I have high confidence they would show high levels of deception being present.
Well, from what I heard, Roberts was supposedly yelling and screaming behind the scenes.
Yeah, I that's probably an unreliable source, that story. Clerks don't leak like that out of the Supreme Court. So it's highly unlikely that story is true, to be honest. I think it's what people want to believe is true, but I don't think it's what actually happened. It's also not quite like Roberts, and it's not the way that would shake down, to be honest with you. It doesn't feel accurate.
It sounded like it's a bit too perfect, and it's exactly what someone would say in order to create the narrative. But I don't place much weight in it. I've heard multiple accounts of it, but it's too perfect. It's the orgy of evidence out of a Minority Report, and I doubt it happened.
And that'd be a question for Scott. Like, when somebody's story fits too well, how does that play into your analysis?
It depends on the details and how detailed they get. Because if you said, did you just come back from the store? Or you said, where have you been? I said, well, I went to the mini mart On the way back, I came up, a West End, I turned left there on Ellington Avenue and came up, and I went through that first stop sign. You go around, and I went around the corner and then came on into the driveway. That's a weird comparison, but I mean, when you get too many details that are right on the money, that's pretty much when I start going, what? Hang on just a second.
Scott, let me put you on the spot here then, Scott. Listening to the Joe Biden excuse for how he hurt his ankle, what was your impression of that? Speaking of too many details, I'm leading you now, actually, but what did you think of his explanation?
I wasn't so sure that it happened that way. just from here right out of the gate, I didn't pay that much attention to it, but I remember going, because my wife goes, well, and I was looking, I don't know, man.
All right. Before we get started, Viva asked a question of Scott, and it's a good way to start off. How in the world do you actually get certified or qualified or degreed, other than taking behavior tactics from your body language tactics from your site? How do you get qualified to be body language expert?
It takes a long time. Like there's no place you go. Like you see these places we even have a certificate on our course. But when you go to these places, they become a certified body language expert. It's, well, my mom could certify you to be a body language expert or a dirt digger, whatever she wanted to certify you as, because she doesn't care. And most people who certify you, quote unquote, in something, that's just something they say for you to give you something to stick up on your wall or whatever when you do it. So there's no place you really go. There's no college classes for it. There's no one person you go see. So it's mostly reading, and you have to do it yourself. And I started when I was a little kid, so I sort of lucked out. So that's where you learn your trade, I guess, as you go along. And then you start watching people, and then you start finding other people really don't pay attention the way you do. And you start saying, well, I could show you how to do that. So that's what sparked my interest in training people how to do it, where I started training law enforcement in the military. And like we were talking about earlier, once you start doing that and you go to a certain place and there's say something in the military or something, you'll go there and then they'll say, well, I got to find out about your background. Great. And so they'll call around. They'll call around and make sure you're who you say you are every time. So did he really train here? Did he really train these people? And these things are all confidential. So you have to tell that person, they say, well, you can't say anything here. You got to sign all these papers. Yeah. But then I have to say, so if somebody calls me and they want to make sure I'm not full of it, I'm going to have them email you or call you. Is that good? And they're most of the time like, yeah, that's fine. That's fine. Because it's another situation they're aware of or know in either the military or whatever it is. So there's no real place to go get trained. And it's sort of almost like word of mouth as you go along. And then you get a background check every 4 minutes, it feels like.
That's what I was going to ask. Do you run into skepticism of people who think you can't really do that you can't really interpret body language that effectively?
Well, a lot of times they're right, because it's really tough. They're under the impression there are absolutes, or that I believe there are absolutes. And the absolutes are, because I got a big nose, so I use this as an example. Well, if I were to scratch my nose, it means I'm lying. Or if I start blinking a lot, it means I'm lying. No, in and of themselves, those mean absolutely nothing. My nose could itch. I may goof around with it all the time. It may be a nervous tick or habit. But if you were asking me something and I was to do, if you asked, is that your dog out in the car? And I was, oh yeah, that's mine out there. I've had that forever. I just showed you 14 things that say something's up. Something's not right about the dog. The dog is dead. I stole the dog, or I don't know what you're talking about, but I'm pretending I do. There's a myriad of reasons I could be doing that.
Well, my issue, not my issue with it, but my impression of it is it's sort of like, to some extent, it's like astrology, although I think it's a little bit more actually concrete based, and your predictions can turn out to be right much more often than wrong. But it's like 50-50 sometimes, and then everybody forgets the times they were wrong and they focus on the times they were right.
Yeah.
And so like you see, there's dozens of people online doing body language. And when I do it, it's all based on my own experience, my own projections. And that's why I sort of think it's 50-50, but over time, I guess, like good poker players, some are going to be right more often than not. And that's what separates the schnooks successes.
Well, the thing is, if somebody asked you and I if this person was lying or telling the truth, whatever it was, first guess out of just one question, my ability to know that is just the same as yours, 50-50. How the heck would I know? So you'll see one thing and you'll say that might be weird, but you start looking for several things that tell you neurologically there are things going on where that person is. For example, if you ask me a question, I was going to lie about it. And sometimes it happens very quickly. Sometimes it will happen slowly, the reaction. My brain has to do 3 things before I answer. My brain has to go, ooh, hang on a second. Don't answer that. Hang on just a second. We got to come up with something. So you've got to stop, then you got to come up with a lie, create a lie. Then you got to decide how you're going to deliver it. So then in that delivery of the lies, when you see most of the information you're looking for, and then 3 to 5 seconds later, you'll see a couple of things that will suggest all these. And there are no absolutes. So these things that we see or that I see, they denote, they indicate, they suggest there's an issue there. Joe Navarro, he's the King Kong of body language. He's the first, 3 heads on the Mount Rushmore of body language. He says,
him and Ekman, probably Navarro and Ekman together as major leaders,
Ekman
and Desmond Morris.
Ekman is mostly facial. I mean, that's what he got famous for, the micro expressions. So yeah, he's the one. If you want to find out about facial expressions, that's the first place you go. But if you want to learn about the entire the behavior of an entire body, a human body, then you start going to the studies and you start going to the right books. There's so much bad information out there. I did a whole TEDx talk on that, but there's so many people that will tell you, I can tell for sure I'm a human lie detector. It's like, ugh. As soon as you hear that, it's like, oh man, okay. You click next video, because there are none. There's no such thing. But you have to look at that person's behavior and take into consideration everything going on around it and put that in context with what you're seeing.
And that actually leads into something I wanted to do. I'll get right to you, Viva.
Norman.
And I know you guys will love it. I won't pick on Viva first because he's so neurotic. But Barnes, it would be awesome, Scott, if you could demonstrate how you would pick up a baseline on Barnes.
Well, I've already done it, like from watching videos and stuff. So, but his key to the okay, I'll if I was explaining this to somebody else, because when I get off here, Greg and I'll talk, and they'll say, "Well, how was it? What would you think?" Then I would say, "Okay," because he knows we've discussed this. Your thing is the confidence that you exude. That's the charismatic part of your thing. Because look at the way you're sitting. You're like, come on, let's do this. Whatever it is, if I say, you know what I think about you, and lean into it, you'd be like this. You go, okay, and then there I'd be. You see, all you see is confidence in that. From the cigar to the way you're sitting, the way you answer stuff. You got that microphone right there. You're not ready. You're not going to back away from that and make your answers a little quieter as you go along. You're going to sit right there and bang and answer everything. So that's what I would read from it, and I have from the very first. Because when I first started finding out who you were, I was like, "Holy smokes!" And Greg's always like, "Yeah, that's a powerful cat, man." So it's one of those things. That's why I'm scared to death to be on here. It's like I was telling Eric, you guys, we got these huge frontal lobes, and I'm just like this little idiot running around and going body language,
I think I'm detecting some slightly deceptive cues there.
No, believe me, nothing there at all is deceptive. That's what I really think. So your thing is mostly confidence.
Oh yeah, I mean, well, and for folks out there that may be new to this, there's really 2 great discoveries that have added to my toolbox as a practicing lawyer over the past 4 years that have been revelatory. Before that, David Mamet's 3 Uses of the Knife used to be the #1 thing I would cite. But it's Scott Adams' persuasion analysis and the behavior panel. Their work is just fantastic, off the charts. It's just ingenious insight that's incisive. And particularly if you're in the law, the number of bad like what Scott's talking about, bad analysis of behavior, body language, lawyers are frankly some of the worst at it. I mean, when I first got into it, picking juries, reading witnesses, interpreting judges, they would project all the time. They would have all these characters. Even John Grisham does this in his novels. He'll be like, fat people bad, skinny people good. I mean, really bad. And you think that's nobody believes that. All kinds of lawyers believe that. That's why they pick terrible juries. There was a jury I could have picked better. That's what I was telling Chase. I was like, you guys should definitely, and I guess you guys actually do this. Jury consulting, witness preparation, witness review, and things like that, because it'd be tremendously helpful. Because I've been using what you guys do in various cases that I have currently to help interpret language, understand psychology, understand motive. People just communicate all over the place. If people like, I did a huge for Wesley Snipes before the trial, went all the way up to the U.S. Supreme Court on handwriting exemplars because people disclose so much information there that nothing about that is physical. It's entirely mental, frankly. But body language is the same, and body language even more so, because it's just so hard to have it's one thing to lie in your mind. It's another thing to lie with your entire body.
And the amazing thing is, I think everybody would get exponentially better if they practiced law or if they had children, because the one thing is, you can see how infants lie or children lie, and they lie in a way that's sort of, I'd say, subconscious in a sense, but adults lie in a way that's not much different. It's just more honed and it's more skilled and more trained over time. But when you're a lawyer, and like we talk about the baseline tests and the lie detector tests, and why the guy asks the baseline questions. A deposition is no different. Like, there are questions that are substantive where you expect to be misled or lied, but you have these intro questions and you establish this rapport with the witness, even if they're hostile, to get to know how they react to non-hostile, straightforward questions. So you could see if there's a demeanor in the baseline throughout the examination. And it's a skill that you get better at, or if you're going to be a bad lawyer, you never get better at, but it's a skill that develops over time. But it does part from the baseline, which is an interesting thing to try to get on any individual.
That's why my theory is that Viva would be a better liar than me, because he's married and he's got young kids. So
I am capable of lying because I expect to get struck by lightning if I do, regardless of where I am. So,
but I think
let's get that baseline for Viva.
Yeah. Well, but I think Robert's confidence would override that. Then you go, really? Yeah. I think it is daytime outside.
I know I get my feeling when Barnes is more certain of things than other things, and now I have a very strong baseline with Robert. So there are some things that he is definitely more confident about than others, and I think I can tell the difference after 50 hours of more than that now. Geez.
How about with your kids or your wife? Do you think it becomes easier or harder? And this is a question both for Viva and Scott, to detect when someone's not being truthful when you have a longer, closer relationship with them?
I think it becomes impossible. With the wife, baseline, I mean, I'll know when she's lying. I'll know when she's hiding something from me. And not hiding in the negative sense. I know when she doesn't want to tell me something that she wants to tell me because she's afraid of hurting my feelings. There's no question. And kids are, I don't want to insult them. Kids think adults are idiots and they can lie to their face. And we don't put two and two together to know that if there's chocolate on their face, chances are they ate the chocolate type thing. Some of them too.
But in my case, in my first marriage, she was having an affair and I had no idea because I accept everything. And her hair was falling out and she was acting, I thought she was sad that she had cancer or something. She just wasn't telling me. So, because I would never go, wonder what's happening here. When I think back on it, I saw all the things. I just didn't, but I was around her all the time. So I didn't put that, didn't add that in there. But she thought forever that I knew and that I was messing with her the whole time.
Well, your ability to detect a lie in her might be overridden by your own sort of subconscious denial that you would never want to admit that or even sort of admit that possibility. So you do whatever you can to bury that possibility and come up with other more, I say outlandish explanations, but less plausible explanations.
Yeah, because you swore to God at a church in front of everybody, the preacher, your family, and all that, and she'd never do that. So it never entered into it at all, not even a little bit. I just thought she was losing her mind or something, and she thought I was messing with her the whole time. So,
wow, so it's kind of like What Lies Beneath, which is one of my favorite films, where you never know whether she's just creating this ghost in order to expose a deeper truth she's been trying to bury from herself, or whether the ghost is really there and the rest. It's just a genius film, which I thought that the new show was going to be like that. The show, what was it called? The Undoing, but ended up being kind of in between it and Presumed Innocent, which is another great. That's our first movie reference. Another great. The Scott Rouse stuff is fantastic, and I'll never forget the closing line. There is crime and there is punishment, but just genius, well done. But
do you sleep, Robert?
Say that again.
Do you sleep?
Oh yeah, I sleep. In fact, I have to take sleeping pills to sleep because can't. It's not always advantageous to your brain to go boom, 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 boom. So I got to find ways to suppress activity. So I try to find things that completely sensory close everything out. So I like movie room. So there's nothing. I'm just absorbed into that. Some narrative story that's really compelling, and that's what really helps, to chill me out. Otherwise, I just keep shooting around.
And books, I imagine, because you have to really concentrate to read.
Yeah,
So
and you just
Eric,
grab and
sure.
snag.
Earlier, Eric, we were talking about you earlier, Robert. We talked about Robert's sentence structure. That right there is what I'm talking about. Exactly how he explained that. Right. If when you go back and listen to this again, listen to his sentence structure, the words he uses when he's explaining something compared to when he's just talking to you about something. In other words, that's what I'm talking about. That's where you go, oh no, that's going to be that's somebody that's smart. Look out, because sentence gets everything tight and says a lot with a small amount of words to get in there quickly. Not so you're not ready for it, but that's what that is. That shows that you've got a lot of your frontal lobe's a little bit bigger than mine, number one, and most everybody else's.
Scott, that's how I feel with everybody. So don't even worry about it.
I doesn't matter says so does weed, Robert. I don't know if one's reaction to marijuana is an indication of back when I was a kid, I smoked weed. It did nothing to relax. I mean, that was like, I would have if I have 1,000 thoughts a second now, I would have 1,000,000 thoughts a second then, where like time would go on for an eternity and you would live entire eternities within a very, 5 seconds. But I don't know. And I've talked to people who have done it and had no reaction. So it's like, it's a very weird thing. I think that reveals brain structure. I don't think it's relaxing for everybody at all.
For me, it was the opposite. I hurt my arm once, and my little sister made one of these pot brownies with her husband, or with my brother-in-law, her husband, and it turned out it was like much stronger than it was supposed to be. But before, I had smoked marijuana at college, and I was like, but then I figured out later I never inhale because I don't like things going to my lungs, and because of cigars, you get in the habit of not inhaling. And so I was eating it, and I was like, the marijuana just has no effect on me. And she kept saying, watch out, it's a little bit slow. I ate that whole thing. And first I started I couldn't stop laughing at everything. It didn't matter what it was. Tried to go into the movie room and turned on the news. It's all bad information. That's why I hate the news. But I kept laughing. It was car accident. I was laughing. Another thing, I was laughing. And then I ended up freezing. And my brain knows that my body, there's no reason for it to be frozen. But I sat there drooling for 5 hours. So that was my last experience with pot. I was like, okay, no. I hate things controlling me like that. But I understand why people with anxiety, it benefits them because it helps chill out, take the edge off, take the ease off. But, people I know have had Viva's reaction where it doesn't have that effect. I think it does depend on the pot you get, though.
Right, that's the problem. Not that I want to confess too much of it, but when I was a kid, one time you get weed and it would just be a fun, chill time. You're relaxed. And the next time I'm messing up. They know I'm messing up. What am I going to do? And I came out later to find out, because yes, I have had a weed manufacturer on, that there's two strains. There's a one strain of cannabis, I guess we used to call it Sinsemillion, and then there was the other one. But when we were getting skunk weed, which I grew up with, it was whatever came down the pike. So there was no quality control like there is now, from what I understand. Triple Crown had a question here, Scott, that I think is an interesting one. Does a body language expert need or have to train themselves not to shake or nod their heads in disagreement or agreement so as to not lead whomever they're reading?
Not really. I mean, there are things you want to pay attention to, because, like, for example, if you'll see these lines and they're never going away, these things, because I'm always doing, when I'm talking, when it looks like that. And there are things you don't want to do. If you say, I'm not doing the little things, but the more a person is natural, the more that person picks up things that feel natural.
This is why we have a chat, sativa and indica. Sorry.
You can display all these things and say, I'm telling you the truth, but there just won't be something right about that. There are a couple of parts of your brain that pick all that up. The fusiform gyrus is a part of your brain that picks up all the little bitty movements. And then you have the mid-temporal gyrus that picks up the larger movements. And if those things are sort of out of sync, you don't know why you feel weird about it. But those parts of those brains sit back to this thing called the locus coeruleus, back at the base of your brain. And that's the thing that starts putting all that together. What am I seeing? And it starts comparing it to everything you've ever seen before or experienced. And when it goes, something's not right here. And you don't know what it is, but that's that gut feeling you get. Women get women's intuition. Theirs is more powerful than ours. But that's that gut feeling. I don't know, something's just not right here. And that puts that person off, and they don't know why they don't trust you. but they don't, they get that feeling they don't trust you. So I really don't pay attention to that. If it's somebody who's done something they shouldn't have done, and it's a situation where I've got to talk like this, talk a little bit lower, but make sure that I talk slower and my words are further apart so they sink in, almost giving them enough time to feel like they're supposed to say something. And then I talk just before they get there. Then that's a different feeling you give them. So there are things you can do on purpose, and you can route someone's brain to start paying attention. Should I talk next? What's happening? What do they know? But when you start trying to fake that, I believe thing, it just, their brain knows it. In other words, they can pick it up. That's the neurological part of human behavior that you pick up and don't even realize it.
Yeah, I find it to be deeply true. Because remember during the Snipes trial, at one point Snipes got up and said, "Hey Barnes, can you do this?" And he could do a better lawyer than me in 5 seconds. It was amazing. He had axes as props, and he was doing all. I was like, "Wow, that's impressive." And I was like, "No, I can't." And I was like, in my experience with jurors, with witnesses, with judges, if you do anything fake, if you do anything exaggerated, if you do anything incorrect, they read it and they distrust you across the board. And in particular, if you're I do a lot of underdog cases, of course, then my client is screwed. My case is screwed. So it's deeply true what he's talking about. You have to come across as honest. You have to be you. You can't be anyone up but you. And if you try to be anyone but you, it's not going to work out well for you.
And the key to that is to getting a jury on your side. One of the first things to keep in mind is as soon as they see you, within that 6 to 9 seconds, they're going to be making up their mind. A lot of people say within a fraction of a second. They don't get enough information for that. But within that first 3, 6, 9 seconds, they take enough information and they start comparing you and what they're seeing on you to everything, like I said before, everything they've seen before. There was a study done go ahead.
Oh, no, I was going to say, Jared Zellner just asked a question, which I was about to bring up, is
right. Well, and it's a super chat. I mean, I don't want to get in there.
No, because it's an interesting thing. Like, and Scott, I mean, in the practice, it comes up a lot. In real life, it comes up on a daily basis where sometimes you're not going to get to read very much about a person. You're just going to realize that they have some, diagnosable condition. And so you can see from their answers, you may or may not be able to tell if they're being truthful or not, but you're going to determine that they have personality disorder, high functioning autism, or some other diagnosable issues. How difficult does it become when you're dealing with those types of diagnosable issues to determine one's authenticity or truthfulness?
That as well, it takes a lot of experience. So you have to have dealt with a lot of those different ones of those, so you'll know what you're seeing. For example, when I was at the Nashville Entrepreneur Center, I was the entrepreneur in residence there from 2011 to 2017. And when we first got started, we'd take anybody off the street could come in and say, "I've got an idea. I need some help with it." We said, "Well, tell me your idea, and maybe I'll be able to help you, figure it out and tell you what next steps to take." There's an incubator there and all kinds of things, but just to get that initial person off the street who may have a good idea that we could help, that's what we would do. And of course, some crazies would come in. So they're like, "We've got to do something." I said, "Let me have all the crazy. Let me have anything odd, anything stands out. Let me have that." Right. And one guy came in and he was meeting with somebody else, and they came in and got me and said, "Listen, you got to come talk to this guy. I don't know what's going on." So what's happened? I can't explain it. You just have to come talk to him. I said, "Okay, I'll go in." So I went and talked to him, and his pitch of his voice was a little bit high, and his eyebrows didn't move much at all. And he was talking about some things that sound a little bit out there. He was talking about the depth of his idea, but here's where you begin the idea, and here's where it gets to what's going on in the idea. He was already here with it, and nobody could understand what he was talking about. And what would happen was he was autistic. This guy was, and as I talked to him, I said, "Who are you waiting on?" And he told me the name of the guy he was waiting on. So I was like, "Okay, I'm going down the right road." I said, Where is he?" He said, "He's parking the car." And I said, "Okay." So what had happened was this guy's an astrophysicist and he's autistic, and he can't explain. So we can understand. I don't know squat about physics, but I knew enough to understand what he was talking about. I was headed down the physics road. So that's why I understood. And then I thought to myself, he's waiting on somebody because he wouldn't be by himself in this situation. That's how I found out there was somebody that he was bringing in. It was a professor from the university he was at. And that from that point, we went forward, but he was very, very still and almost childlike in his approach, because I could tell he'd had a little bit of training in how to use his face and things. That's why it looked odd to them, but I could see what it was. And so he's autistic, and that's what it was. But it was once you see that and you know the things to look for, like not much movement at all in the eyebrows. That's one of the first cues you can look for. And that's what Greg Hartley will tell you every time. That's one of the first things he noticed when he started dealing with autistic people. And understanding that because you don't see facial expressions on them and those types of things, they're still having a lot of the same emotions that the normal person would have. You just don't see it on them. Those things don't come off of them. So approaching that person, when you think something is funny or should be, act as though it would be funny as if they were seeing it. That's one time where you would almost pretending to do it. But after a while, you get used to it, like you get used to doing anything else, and it becomes a natural thing for you. But there are things that people you'll run across with not odd, but different personality situations that you'll be able to nail them as soon as you see them, fairly quickly once you've dealt with enough of them. So it's experience, really.
How about Tourette's? Somebody brought that up.
Do what?
Tourette's syndrome. Have you ever dealt with that at all?
Yeah, I've seen a couple of them, but it wasn't the kind where they're hollering or anything. It was just the kind where they had really, really bad tics, like one. Well, yeah, there's that, but sometimes those are just obsessive compulsive situations. But when you have somebody who can't help but do this all the time, and it's the whole thing they do, and then finally they'll say, I have this problem, or I can't quit doing that, or whatever the thing was. That's the only one I could think of. But there are some out there, and sometimes it's almost comedic because you're thinking, this guy messing with me or she messing. But when you see it real, you go, oh, because you feel it for them because they can't help it. And it's sometimes they can see it on me if I start looking worried or whatever. But I mean, I've seen quite a few of those, but there's a difference between obsessive compulsive and then actually having Tourette's, where you can control it. If you really, really needed to, you could control it, and then not being able to at all with Tourette's, no matter what the situation is.
What's amazing is that juries often make decisions based on nonverbal behavioral cues as much or more so than what happens in the verbal part, the transcript, the part that if you read a transcript, you often can't understand how a trial outcome happened. But if you were there, like during the Snipes trial, there were 3 witnesses I made a big deal out of for the government. And none of them who read the transcript said anything that helped me. It's just all 3 were going to rub the jury the wrong way because they came across as either fake or authoritarian, or some of them just were like right out of the Twilight Zone. And these were high-ranking IRS employees. And people were like, that's who's making decisions at the government? So it's amazing how important and pertinent and relevant it is. That if you can't mime out your trial, you're probably not yet ready for your trial.
Oh, I'm going to use that, but I'm going to give you credit.
Absolutely. Steal it. It's all for, the greatest compliments here, as Picasso said, is theft in art.
Yeah, that's a good one though, but I will give you credit when I use that.
This explains it to some extent in my mind, Robert. We talked about the Johnny Depp case, but this, when we say that judges make up their minds based on a number of things and just not liking someone's vibe and just being susceptible of distrusting everything they say because they rub you the wrong way, because you've misread them or because you've read them the right way. That's just, the good versus bad, body reading. But when I did a humorous sort of breakdown of Zuckerberg's responses to, I think it might've been Hawley, but one of his questions in the congressional hearings. And, I said, look at Zuckerberg. Every single answer is senator, pause. Let me formulate what I think was a deceptive answer. And some people said he's just a high functioning autist and you can't really tell much from it. First thing, I've had pretty close experience with autism family, through family and friends. And whether or not he is, another thing I did to do my homework, I went back just to watch some of his interviews before he became CEO of Facebook. Sorry, not before, but before he became whatever he is today. And none of his responses were anything like that. And so I don't know if that's a sufficient baseline, but whether or not he has some diagnosable condition, his answers in that Senate hearing were just different than any other answer he had given in other settings, which, I think is a good indication of what I thought.
If I was doing the Johnny Depp trial, I would have had someone like Scott there to watch the judge's reaction to Amber Heard, because I would have known, I suspect, or Scott would have picked up, we need to settle this case because the judge is unduly sympathetic. I had a client, Vernie Kuglin. She was a model when she was younger. The judge that presided over her trial was recently divorced. It was clear from day one he liked her. So I was like, keep that going. This is good. We'll get some good rulings. Snipes, unfortunately, did it too much. He had a potential juror who clearly liked him, and Snipes was brilliant at giving off unconscious cues. I mean, that's why that acting skill is legit. It's amazing. Cool. It was amazing being around it. And I was trying to tell him, chill out, because everybody in the courtroom can see what's going on. Because the vibe was, hey, honey, you get on the jury, we'll be on a plane after this baby's over. So and it was obvious, but there's a reason why John Edwards always picked women between the ages of 35 and 45 for his trials, and they were always written. He couldn't wait to write the biggest possible check old Johnny wanted him to write. It's the reason why Johnny Cochran picked a bunch of older African American women who were going to see in OJ their son. And who were not going to be sympathetic with the white woman who stole him from his first black wife. I mean, that was another dynamic. The prosecutor wasn't paying attention. They were putting pictures up there. There was like, I would never put that picture up of the person who was murdered. Young, 17, looking like a cheerleader. It's like, it's going to send the wrong signal to that jury. But yeah, it's all of those. It's amazing how much what you don't see in the transcript is what's really happening in a trial.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and you know what? I don't think it would have taken an expert like Scott to pick up on when a judge has his mind or her mind made up from the very beginning. I think that's what separates a competent attorney from a schlock, is that, look, and it's like people don't like the idea of settling. They think it's cowardice. You can know pretty soon, pretty quickly, when you are not going to make any headway with a judge regardless. And it's not a question of cowardice. It's not a question of bad, weak representation. It's a question of playing the hand that you're dealt, where you just say, yeah, settle fast, and it's not going to get any better than this. I mean, any lawyer who can't really tell that and have the courage to tell their client, it will end up doing a disservice to their client. But judges are easy to read typically because they're so eager to show what they feel, because they're in the position of power sitting on the bench, and you can read it 9 out of 10 times.
I mean, I agree. Should have been the case. In my experience, 90% of lawyers are bad at it, in large part because of projection. They tend to project on the judge and the jury what they want or what they think. Like I've had people, young lawyers, come in and try to read a jury, and I do it mostly to train them that they are not good and skilled at reading jurors. So don't try. Let experts do it, and you do your own job and make an original analysis if you don't have the availability of an expert, because they all fail at, and it's because they all project. And I mean, jurors, and I had a question for Scott. What happens when people know they're being watched? How does that change how their baseline is, how they interpret it, and so forth?
That we can take that back to Zuckerberg. He knew he was going to be on TV. He knew everybody's going to be watching him. So the training he got wasn't very good. And that's because they said, you're going to need time to think. So you can say, Senator, here's what happened. But he didn't go, Senator, here's what happened. He went, Senator, I did so-and-so and so-and-so. Senator. So he was doing it wrong. So it's, if someone is trying, if for example, if you're in interrogation, they know you're watching them, and after a while they'll forget the camera is, but they're very aware of that most of the time as well. But you'll see, they'll be really still, and they'll be trying to give you the answer they think you want to hear if they did it. And if not, that's when you see them be more relaxed. They're more, see more fluid movements than someone who's paying attention to give you exactly what they think you want to hear. Those people that
loping, you call it?
Do what?
You call it loping, don't you? The standard. I thought you called it loping, their baseline when people are talking.
I thought you said milking. I was like, what's that? Yeah. Somebody's telling their story, and you broke up a little bit. So, and their story's like, yeah, da, 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 and they're just kind of going right along. Then all of a sudden, it's some parts speed up and some slow down, and as they talk, and they'll get a little bit quicker here, and then just a little bit slower as they go along. The loping stops. It just becomes the cadence, in other words, gets really odd in there. So that's when you start paying closer attention. And if you really want to put the heat on someone who's being still like that, that's when you engage this and you start talking to them like this. And it's when you talk slowly and you put those spaces for right when you've timed it to see how much time goes by before they talk, but you talk just before they start. And that totally messes up their thinking process of when to answer. So when they're trying to give you portray themselves as something, you'll see the act that sometimes they'll try to act fluid and do things, but it's just, those parts of the brain we talked about earlier can see that and give you that little gut feeling. And as soon as you start listening to that, that's when it's a whole new world. Once you know those feelings you get about someone when you see them, and you understand why you're getting those feelings, because your brain is letting you know that something's up, everything changes at that point. That's why mothers and even women who aren't mothers, they're great at figuring out if somebody's being honest or not, or a good person. I can't tell you how many times my wife has said, I just don't like that guy. And I'm like, well, why not? I don't know why. Something wrong with him. And sure enough, maybe years go by, but that person ends up being not the person you'd want to hang out with, in other words.
There's the trust your gut for a reason. I'm convinced people exude an intangible aura, and sometimes right away, other times it takes a little bit longer. And I say, as a lawyer, I think it is one of the things that, lawyers who stay out of trouble learn quickly what client to take and what client not to take. And you need to be able to, more often than not, within an hour consult with a client, determine whether or not they're going to be headaches, good clients, truthful clients, or the ones that get you into trouble professionally and cause you heartache. And so sometimes mental illness is it's not. I had a manic bipolar client, and so when they're in a normal state, you can never tell anything. And if you meet them for 2 or 3 hours, even a day, when they're not in a manic or bipolar state, you'll never know anything because you can't detect anything. But then you quickly learn that you have a manic bipolar client. And I once had an experience with a witness who, it was only because it was an extended file. I knew that this witness was if there's a pathological sociopath or a pathological liar who can lie without remorse, and you would never know the difference between a lie and a truthful statement, this witness was one of those people. And the only way you could get to the lie was by pressing the answers. And then eventually, at some point, the details could not, keeping up with the dishonest details could not keep up with the initial lie, but it took pressing and it took time, but you could never distinguish a truthful statement from a lie on a statement on its own without pushing. And it was a scary thing because there's a lot of people like that running around the world.
Well, I had a client once that really had 5 different personas, and my favorite persona of his was the sociopathic one because it was the most rational one. The other ones were far less enviable to deal with. But the other interesting thing is, going to Scott's point, a great plaintiff's lawyer taught me early on in depositions. What he did is, when he knew he had a person who was going to lie to him and wanted to tell him a lie, he would find the lie that would set him up. So I'll give an example. He had someone who was driving a school bus, and he was actually speeding, but he claimed later he wasn't speeding. But legally, he wasn't legally speeding. He was just speeding for the circumstances. And so the only thing he could prove the school bus did wrong was that it was going faster than should have been for the rain. And he knew that was the lie that he could get this person to tell was, oh, absolutely, he wasn't speeding. And he set up his own legal standard. He created a case through that witness's desire to lie, established his own liability that wouldn't have happened but for his desire to lie, but for the fact that the plaintiff's lawyer that I worked for was very good at getting people to lie for their own self-destruction. It was highly. I learned all my deposition tricks from him. He was a fascinating personality. Not necessarily the most likable, but he was fascinating.
Got a super chat here. What do you do with someone who cannot understand basic logic? So that could be for any of you.
Sounds like my first marriage.
I see your part because you got in it.
Yeah, could be.
Yeah,
Okay,
I think it depends. I mean, there's people who truly are slow, and there are people who, in my experience, most of the time, it's not that their lack of cognitive capacity; it's their lack of experience in that particular area, and people's ego will sometimes blind them. So, I had this case that was a complex case that, on paper, blue collar jurors would be really good, but because it had all this complexity, I was running into, in the focus groups, they were the biggest hurdle as a demographic group and it was because they didn't want to admit they didn't understand it. It was just not part of their lived experience. It wasn't because they had any cognitive limitations. It was just like trust and all this probate, like what the heck? But rather than admit, you know what? I don't know what the heck that crap is. they had to, they decided, I'm just going to rule against you because I'm annoyed that you're making things complicated for me, and I'm going to sort of attribute that to you in terms of culpability, rather than acknowledge they just couldn't. This was outside their area of life experience. So that's been my experience. I've met very few people who really can't follow logic. In fact, if anything, the more educated someone is, the more likely their bias dominates their thinking. Motivated reasoning, I think, is universal, and that's why I say if you want to improve your reasoning, change your motivation. It's not like reason's going to magically master motivation tomorrow, but if you change your motivation, you can really improve your reasoning. It's one of the great things that law should teach people, because you have to be in everybody's shoes. Okay, I'm in the juror's shoes, the witness's shoes, the judge's shoes, the opposing counsel's shoes. What would I do in their shoes? And that it gives you a different kind of filter, hopefully. Unfortunately, it hasn't quite worked that way. But that's the theory behind how we're instructed as lawyers.
It's an amazing thing, because I tend to agree with Robert. I don't think, lacking logic, setting aside brain diagnosable dysfunctional disorders, there's behavior where people just say you are totally illogical, but in their own mind, it's totally logical because they've altered one minor detail of a fact or even they've interpreted one detail differently to justify one conclusion, which is diametrically opposed to the other. And the most recent example I can think of is just discussions online about the Trump super spreader COVID events versus the BLM protests, and
Biden celebrations,
or the Biden celebrations, and you have scientists saying they're sort of more in tune. They say, yeah, I sort of emotionally agree with one, and therefore I might be looking for reasons to justify it. But then you have other people who say, well, of course the Trump rallies were super spreaders because they weren't wearing face masks, and little details like that, which make them look illogical, but it is just motivated reasoning where they want to find a conclusion, and they will. And then people say, oh yeah, of course the super spreader events were Trump's, and of course that's true. Look at the study. And then someone sent them a study, and I said, that you realize that study's not peer reviewed. It's like, oh well, not everything has to be peer reviewed to be good science. And then that's where one might think that that's illogical reasoning, but it is just attributing different values and different weight to different elements to come to the conclusion you already want to, which is bad reasoning.
Well, before we go on something else, real quickly, but both Barnes and Viva did want to kind of do a reading. And so it was my task. I came up with a video clip. It's almost 2 minutes, but there's a lot going on in it. I already showed it to Scott, so he has an idea. I didn't want to take the Zuckerberg thing or whatever that was out there. This is something that I feel personally, so I'm taking advantage of the situation. I'm going to use everybody's opinion probably in another video because I have very strong feelings about it. So this is going to be fun. I think everybody's going to enjoy it.
Ah, yes.
For background, you had a 10-year relationship with Keith. That's correct.
Over 10 years, yeah.
And during that time, he had other partners.
Yeah.
And he asked you, or you decided to, I don't know what the sequence was, but you ended up and are still married to Allison Mack. Is that true?
Oh yeah, he did not ask me to do that. That was
now
completely of our own volition and idea. Yeah.
Right. And you had a relationship separately with Olson that suggested let's get married, and that wasn't Keith saying you should get married.
No. We told him that's what we were going to do.
All right, and you got branded.
I'm happy to talk about it. I also want to talk about kind of the assumption in the question and how it's become such a hot topic. Even saying you got branded as opposed to did you get a brand has a certain connotation, right? Yeah. And I believe that if it were a group of a fraternity of men, which often it is, and there are fraternities where men choose to get brands, we wouldn't be having this conversation. I'm glad we're having this conversation because I'm happy to talk to you about it, and I think it exposes a certain misogyny that is ironic.
I like where you're going. I like where you're going because let me see if I could restate that. If men have decided to allow themselves.
All right, that's pretty much it. I think we got the main content there. There's questions of deception, I believe, early on about her marriage and the way she reacted about Brandy, and I'm sure a lot more that Scott probably picked up. I'm dumb, so I pick high points. So we'll start with Viva. What are your thoughts?
Okay, so not knowing anything about this, I think I know what the subject is, because I know that this is NXVIM, or if that's what it is. I know that Scott interviewed her. I know nothing of the story except for Eric, what you told me afterwards, because I didn't know anything before. Okay, so it's very well. Here, my two main takeaways. I think Robert is very sympathetic to the person. I don't know who she is or what their relationship is, but all of his questions were very leading and very forgiving questions, and not in the sense not in the sense that he's trying to lead her to where he wants to go. I genuinely think he is sympathetic to her and forgiving on her, and maybe even likes her in a sense. Her answer strikes me as being the classic, what I would perceive to be the victim trying to explain away their own victimhood, to rationalize it, to make themselves not a victim. Where she clearly got branded, but she doesn't want it to look like it was an involuntary thing. I don't even know what they're talking about, actually, but she doesn't want it to be like something that was done to her. She wants to spin it as though something that she allowed to be done to her, or something she did to herself by allowing others to do it, which it does strike me as being a victim trying to, I would say even a victim who either doesn't recognize that they're a victim or is trying to convince themselves that they're not a victim. And deceitful, not to Scott, I think deceitful to herself, and then trying to flip it as if to say, you daring to ask me that is your own misogyny, and how dare you. But I genuinely get the feeling that she is still a victim, and doesn't want to admit it, or is incapable of admitting it, not knowing anything more to the situation.
Barnes.
So, my response will be instinctual. And what I love about what the behavior panel does, what Scott and Chase and Mark and all of them do, is, and you can find it in their books, which are all fantastic, which I've been reading through. Not all the way through, because you guys write a lot, but it's great. It's great stuff. Absolutely. But what is that? A lot of what I would call instinct, they help give an architecture and an explanation of, an explication of, because I just articulate it as just an instinctual thing. I can't even always say what it is or how it is or why it is. But just watching her in that brief period of time, I would think if I got a chance to depose her, I could lead her down any primrose path I want, just because there's something there psychologically taking place that I could get her to where I wanted to go if I did it right. And so wherever I wanted to go, I would feel confident with this witness. Like there's some witnesses that are tough. She would not be one of those witnesses in my view. If you knew what you're doing, you could get her to say exactly what you wanted her to say for the most part.
Well, I agree.
Now, does anyone know if Scott has a pre-existing relationship with her?
Scott has been troublesome in my mind. Honestly.
Yes, I know you're agitated because he kind of. I'll defend him a little bit. When I first started watching The Vow, the show that's about them, my first thought was, what exactly is criminal here? Because it's like, to give an example, the TV show Yellowstone, to go to her point. This would, if I was defending that side of I would never defend him. There's no chance. But the actual Nixium guy, and I'm not a fan of cults as part of the problem. Though now and then I think maybe I should start one. It'd be easier way to live sometimes. But I mean, we see some of these people that lead cults, and you're like, man. I mean, no, Scott would know more about understand this better. But I'm like, that person's not impressive to me. It's like, that guy's leading a cult. Oh man, I'm in the wrong racket. It is that. Like in the show Yellowstone, they brand all their workers, and we don't have an instinctive there's a little bit of a, I suspect an audience questionable reaction, but not moral horror like there is here. Now, I think that's because it has a different connotation here, frankly, if you watch The Vow. And you notice her response. She didn't like that question at all. It's the one question she responds to three things. One is she clearly, like most natural human beings, doesn't like the fact that he has other partners. Just the way she responds. That was just a gut read, was just that she was going to pretend that she isn't bothered by it, but she's clearly bothered by it. It was like my ex-fiance would ask if so-and-so was pretty. I answered that the wrong way a couple of times, got the shock treatment. Remember not to do it the next time. But the second one is she reacts a certain way but particularly to the brand question, she reacts very demonstrative. She changes, I guess you could say, her baseline. She clearly doesn't like that question, is embarrassed by that question, is annoyed by that question, and tries to flip the script. And Scott Adams accommodates her. I think Adams has a dissonant view because he's wondering, to what extent is what's being criminalized here unique levels of hypnosis and persuasion rather than criminality? Now, you dig into the facts of the case, there's actual child pornography, there's actual coercion, there's actual blackmail. Those are crimes.
No, there's built-in blackmail, especially in the group that gets branded, because they have to release their weekly materials, which is either getting nude or saying somebody molested them or raped them. There was actually, I haven't seen the vow yet. Stars has another version of it that was made with a cooperation of Oxenberg. The kid, India Oxenberg.
Yeah.
And she did not work with the vow. She worked with the other. And it is a straight documentary. And I think that one really does a good job. As Rick Allen Ross, who's been on the show before, as one of the people involved and everything else. But Scott, tell us about it. I'm very curious too, because I feel like she put a lot of effort into saying, no, the marriage. No, it's my idea. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, what we're seeing here are the classic hallmarks of someone who's in a cult. And I call them victims of cults, because you're seeing this gloss of everything's fine. Everything's fine. And you'll see it from the Manson cult to I'm not familiar with this. Okay. That's why I said, when you show me this, who is this? What is it? Sure. So we're seeing there is this really odd gloss across her face where no matter what you say, everything's fine. Because she's been, when they get down to the branding part, we're seeing her deflect from that. And she deflects from that and says, oh, well, if it would have been men having done that, it would be a completely male. And she takes them down a different road. She starts bringing up this other information and starts sending them down another road. That's another thing. She's been told how this is okay to do. And she probably regrets it. But then again, as stated earlier, she's feeling like she needs to make herself feel like that's okay that happened. She's still telling herself that. There's a lot of psychological dampening that's gone on here with this girl. It's by looking at her, I can tell you that's horrible. And I'm sure those kind of people, in my opinion, those are the kind that in those situations that will end up thinking about suicide, because she's fighting with so much to try to get that information across, because she knows everything she's talking about doesn't go down this usual social norms of what most everybody else believes to be normal, because she's been taken completely out of that by this guy. And to keep her in his little stable, then those are some of the things you do. You brand someone. That's huge. Talking to somebody and letting you do that, because that's forever. You're going to have that forever. So she's done a lot of things that she feels bad about. No telling what other things he's got on her, ? From she's done, videos she's been a part of or whatever. But those types of situations, I feel sorry for this girl. I think she may be saying that she's okay to, with their marriage or whatever. I don't think she's good with that either. I think she feels trapped. I think she feels like it's too late and she's too old and she's wasted her life. And I think those things constantly run in the back of her head. And that's what it looks like to me. That's what makes that gloss of that, like she's on, like she's been sedated or something. But it's a psychological sedation that she's doing to herself to stay calm. And the answers she's given are rehearsed. Those are answers that someone has given her. Those aren't the words she's usually using. The words she used in her sentence structure, she was repeating what somebody said. They didn't say these words exactly. They said, so here's what happened to you. Here's what happened. And then she just repeats what they said. So if you'll listen to that closer, you'll see that as well. That's what I was talking about Robert earlier. His sentence structure fascinates me because it's so tight and so all together, but it sounds like and there it is. Whereas hers, that pause, and then she starts delivering it, and she'll look around a second to think of what she's heard to send out. That's what
she is an actress too, by the way. She was in Battlestar Galactica, pretty well known actress. So talent actor. So skills to generate, the lines and things like that. I do think it's a factor. There's training there.
Well, at least in my experience, I mean, I know Scott has experience in the music industry and the rest. with my experience with a lot of those people, like one of the reasons why a lot of the actors are great actors or performers are great performers is there's major identity issues going on there. And it makes it easy for them to take on a totally different identity. I think it's also what made so many of the people he targeted came from the acting community or from or the music community, wanted to be in that field. Performers, I guess you could say, that you thematically unite their past professions or careers. And there's something built in, and what Scott's saying is definitely accurate. When they have an image of themselves that they've built up within a sort of cultish mindset, when that image comes crumbling down, it can be a bad outcome. I mean, that's where like you need those people generally are not better confronted. They're better transitioned somehow back into a different identity. You confront them too much and it just wrecks their view, and it doesn't lead to a good outcome usually, unfortunately.
And it's interesting the way Scott, the way you phrase it. I mean, you can totally envision the process where this is what's being told. We're not doing this to you. This is part of the love for everything. I really have no idea where the brand was, what it was, and how big it was, but it was
a very intimate place.
Like you can imagine that this is exactly the speech that was told to whoever got this at the time it happened, and this is the reflex default justification if and when it ever comes up again, to whomever brings it up. Since
it gets worse because keep this in mind, it was a fancy looking brand, and a lot of the women didn't realize it because it just looked like this ancient symbol. But when you flip it sideways, it's a KR.
It's his initial.
Oh.
And that's the really, really deep,
and the irony,
creepy
the guy's
part.
a self-help guru. I mean,
He's still Scientology.
Can you imagine a cult guy out of a? No, I don't like a lot of self-help movements. I'm probably gonna get some hate mail for that. Just go to vivabarneslaw.locals.com, and if you subscribe, I will read your trolling comments. But that's the only place. Or comment below. Feed the algorithm for Eric. I'll go through and read those too, and you can send me the hate mail.
Make sure you subscribe, please. He did run MLMs all the way up. I actually have somebody coming on who knew Keith Raniere before Nexium.
I've defended people in the MLM. Now, I like some aspects of MLM, but that theoretical. Okay, I think we can read that body language as disdainful and contemptuous, but that's fair. But the reason why theoretically MLM could have been a direct merchandising mechanism outside of the consumer distribution systems we have, the corporate distribution systems we have today. At least this was part of my defense when I was defending some of them in court.
Oh, well, good. So they know who to hire. But yes, he definitely has that background. Really quickly, because I know we're getting tight on time here. This leads into a perfect question because I need to plug Scott's course. Scott has a brand new course out. The True Crime Workshop. And if you go to the truecrimeworkshop.com and go to buy it, plug in unstructured, you can get $60 off. So it's only $69. I mean, it's a really good deal. And it's him and Greg Hartley. So you get half the behavior panel in one shot doing the course. And Gavin Stone, who's a friend and friend of the channel, he wants to know, Scott, can you tell us a little about the liar's loop from said course?
Yeah. Thanks, Gavin. Greg and I have come up with a tool to use to help break lies and to break deceptive stories. And it's called the liar's loop. And it's a little loop that you go around, and once it's explained to you, you go, oh my gosh, I never thought about it before. Nobody's ever talked about this before. In the liar's loop, you have, for example, you have a trigger. And when someone triggers you, it's like, let's say I just shot somebody or I killed somebody and I'm trying to hide that. I've got to come up with a story. So that's when I start fabricating. That's you have the trigger. Once the trigger is fired off, it sits over here. Then you have the loop starts. So you fabricate and you make up, what's my story here? What did I do? Okay, he tried to attack me, so I ended up shooting him. Then from that, you go to deconflicting it. Let's see, they're going to ask me every question they're going to ask me. I've got to be able to give them answers. So you deconflict, and then you pitch. And the pitch is the part where you go, where you tell what happened. That's the part where you say, hey, I shot the guy. He came at me and so I had to shoot him. Then you go on to defending it. You have to have, it's when they say, well, what happened here? Then you defend that. And then you go back into, so what you do at that point is you send them back into fabrication once they start defending. So they have to make up more stuff. So it sends them in this little loop. And so once you get them, so they're stuck between the pitch defense and fabricating, that's when we that put you in what's called the death spiral of a lie. because you just get them boxed in. It's the same. All interrogators will know at this point. It's just you're just boxing them in, but that's what it's called. So when you get in that loop, you just get them so they're going back and forth, back and forth. There's no place else to go when you've got them boxed in, and that's when it starts into the death spiral of the lie. That's it in a really, really tight little nutshell. We explain the whole thing in the True Crime workshop.com. It's the first time anybody's ever talked about it. And we're going to train, that's why we're going to train law enforcement in the military as we go forward from now on. We're writing a book on it and everything. And it's fascinating.
Sounds like the OODA loop, Scott. You've heard of the OODA loop, right? It's a little like that, observe, et cetera, only it's from their perspective. It's like you're looking at them doing the OODA loop for a lie on the outside. Is that a fair analogy?
It's close. I see what you're saying. I see why it's similar, but taking the different parts of it into consideration, there's some parts missing from the OODA loop that aren't in there, but I see what you're saying. I totally get what you're saying. But, and I like to sit here and go, well, when I thought of this, but it was Greg said, check this out. What do you think about this? So we started piecing that together and he's like, here's what it looks like to me. I'm like, Jesus, that's brilliant. So, and then we started piecing it together and saying, okay, this is the way it works. So, yeah, it's really, really fascinating little tool. It works like a charm. I've been actually using it. You use it anyway, but once you realize what you're doing, it makes it so much cleaner and so much clearer as you move forward into your questioning from a witness to a criminal. Say if you're trying to get them to tell you what they've done or admit it, it's incredible that nobody's thought of that before or come up with that before.
I say the liar's loop, exactly like when catching one of your kids doing something, the loop is a very short loop just because they don't think that far ahead. It's the same strategy.
Well, that's my theory for, like, they say criminals have low IQ. And I always like to point out, no, the caught criminals have low IQ because they're one-step thinkers. They think one step ahead. They don't think 2 and 3 and 4 steps ahead. And what Scott's describing is the great literary phrase, what webs we weave when first we set out to deceive. But like if you walk into an interrogation room, a Scott, the behavioral analyst you think is there, that maybe you think you can get away with lying, who's going to easily, slowly trap you. Whereas you walk in and you see Greg, you just confess right away because you're terrified.
Yeah.
So he has that intimidating look.
Yeah.
Here's a good question. How much overlap between the body language tactics course, which he already has, and the new one?
Hey, John. Well, there's a big difference. There's some things we've actually pulled from body language tactics because to get into the True Crime workshop, there's some things about body language that you need to know because we started laying all this stuff out. It's kind of like what you see on true crime shows. We go through, start the 911 call, then the first interaction with a detective. And then when you first start we go through, there are about 7 steps. We've added a couple of things on at the end, like psychopaths and things like that, because people are interested in that. But it takes you to
psychopaths, Scott.
Oh, they're my favorite thing. So it takes you through basically the structure of almost every true crime show you've ever seen, which is actually what happens in a crime as you start watching from the 911 call all the way down to the confession. And we explain how all those things are done. And we open up with some tools from body language tactics and then into the liar's loop and make sure you understand that because everything's based off that at this point. Then we take you through each one of those situations so you understand what's happening. So it's a lot different than body language tactics. It's a lot different. It's a lot more information and a lot of cops are coming to that. We're getting tons of them. So it's and they're like, dude, you get these texts and emails. I can't believe this, or this is really, it's incredible. And so there's a couple of gigs that are coming up that we're actually they're training that to police departments from what we've just done in the course so far. It's only been out like a week and a half, 2 weeks. So, but it's doing really well, really well.
Awesome. It's nice how messed up people are complaining in the chat.
Yeah, I think maybe your microphone isn't catching. I think you're getting off your computer microphone. It sounds like maybe.
Okay.
It's not bad enough to worry about. You're able to be understood, so don't let it freak you out now. We're now.
What
was I going to say here? There were some comments up there, which I think I'm bringing over Eric some carryover from the
Dershowitz.
The Dershowitz, yeah. So
yeah. Well, I did see a super chat in there. It went by. Sorry, I don't know that it's necessarily productive to the current conversation. So,
Well, look, this is a discussion. I mean, they're legitimate issues.
I agree.
I did an interview. I was on Alan Dershowitz's channel earlier today, and people have legitimate gripes, legitimate questions about connections that he had with going to certain islands. And this is one of the things I briefly discussed with Alan in our stream, not the video. And Robert and I talk about it later. Is like the clients you choose to represent. At some point, it's not because you're not an OJ because you defended an OJ,
right.
but you do open the door, especially when you have to have a closer relationship with certain clients who are accused of very bad things. You run the risk of getting lumped together, and you run the risk of crossing certain lines. Not knowing anything about what Alan did, I would never have been found on that island in the first place.
Right.
I would found on Aga Khan's island like Justin Trudeau, but that's people. I joke. I don't trust when people give you lavish gifts, because when anyone gives you a lavish gift, it's not a gift. It's creating an expectation of sorts. My theory. But Robert, I mean, you and I have talked about it. How do you represent the scum of the earth, for lack of a better word, without being lumped together with the scum of the earth? But maybe for another stream.
Yeah. I mean, now the behavior panel analysis of Dershowitz is one of his interviews on this topic probably would be interesting. My own instinctual view is he's innocent of the main allegations. Aside, I mean, obviously he represented Epstein, but in terms of I don't believe, like in dealing with a lot of, and they've talked about it. Scott's talked about it. Chase has talked about it. Mark's talked about it. Greg's talked about it. Victims of abuse. I had a lot of experience with this because I represent a lot of victims of domestic violence, children, women, when I was a young lawyer, still do it pro bono a lot. There is always a high risk that somewhere that what has happened to them has damaged aspects of their memory. It's dealing with it realistically. And when I first got involved, I had a lot of the social help groups were saying, always trust single thing they said. And I told him, look, I got to make sure it's true, because if I get in front of one of these judges that I'm in front of all the time in all these cases, and he finds out that I had a witness who lied to him, and that he'll blame it on me, and all of a sudden all the other innocent people will now no longer be protected because he won't know who to trust. It reminds me of the line from Sneakers where the Russian tells the guy, tells Robert Redford's character, you won't know who to trust. But it's a problem. So you have to figure out how to, and I had that happen to me. I had a client I figured out midway through was lying, and I was like, holy crap. And that's not a good position to be in. Mm-hmm. So I learned to try as best as I could to filter out, who was likely telling the truth, who wasn't, using the evidentiary methods that we have as trial lawyers, or at least ones that would be believed versus ones that would not likely be believed. And there were certain parts of her story against Dershowitz that just didn't make sense from the get-go to me. So my instinct is that there are, for some reason, smearing Dershowitz using someone who I think has legitimate claims against. And what is just because they might not be accurate about Dershowitz doesn't mean they're not accurate about the other people they're accusing. I think it's important to separate out. There's this tendency to either say, trust them all, trust every allegation, or trust no allegation. And the truth sometimes is in between. The behavior panel analysis of Tara Reid and Joe Biden was really revelatory. I ended up briefly representing Tara Reid after that because I didn't know what to think of the story initially. And it was shocking, the gap. I mean, the gap of how she presented was very truthful, and how he presented was very, I mean, by that point, I'd watched enough of the shows and read enough of the books to know some of them before they even talked about it with Biden. But I was like, holy moly. And I've seen Biden my whole life and watched him. I was like, that's unusual behavior. And I was like, oh, Joe was being naughty. So we'll see how all that shakes out. But I think long answer short, my own instinctual view is Dershowitz is innocent of these allegations, but it would be fun to see the behavior panel put him under the under the microscope.
Well, he did. I before I went on the channel, I did look at some of the interviews, and he was on The View. And it's an interesting thing Robert brings up is that there might have been some things improprieties. Doesn't mean he's guilty of the main accusation. Another thing, you guys want to have your minds collectively blown. Yeah, we've seen the smear tactics used time and time again. And is it some can say it's not a coincidence that this all came up after he defended Trump, and they did the same thing to Kavanaugh. They did the same thing to whomever. So you can spin it both ways. All that I know is, I would not want to be even that close to certain clients, which is why I never even took clients who I didn't want to have lunch with. But people have to defend OJ. People have to defend the Epsteins. why, or, is it a good decision to go to a private island of someone who you're representing? Probably not, in my opinion.
Oh yeah, and I've told clients there's certain things that if I find that they're guilty of, even if I'm not defending him on that, I will withdraw from the case. And not saying I had a case like that, but there was a case I famously withdrew from. So so let's just leave it at that.
And there was another issue. No, the Tara Reid versus Joe Biden, Ford versus Kavanaugh. I mean, the behavioral panel must have had a field day with those things. But between believing everybody and believing nobody, it is, it's contextual. You can, Tara Reid accusing Joe Biden is somewhat different than Blasey Ford accusing Kavanaugh 35 years later with all of his credentials and FBI, interrogations. It's different than, I forget the actress, and Harvey Weinstein. It's different than making accusations of someone who has the best kept secret that everybody makes jokes about during Oscars. So it's all case by case. I'm well aware of Dershowitz's, visiting the island. And I think that is, you get too close to some of your clients, even if you didn't do anything wrong, it looks like you did. But
the other component there, the other reason why the behavior panel is great for everybody out there and all these course materials are great. I was about to ask Scott 2 questions that I'll get to, but is that it's universally useful. It's useful in your personal life. It's useful in your professional life. It's useful across the board, because I was shocked at the number of people who believed Ford. I was like, I watched that and I was like, if I was a lawyer and she was my witness, I would just fold right there. I would just give up. I would do Jim Carrey's routine and scream, settle, 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 because I was like, all these people find this credible. I was like, this is shocking to me. I get them finding Anita Hill credible because she testified more effectively, but I didn't believe her story from the get-go because of the substance of it. There are substantive aspects. I just like, that doesn't seem to fit. That doesn't seem to fit. In my universal rule, when I was doing all these representation was, if they don't have a history, if there's no one else, like the Johnny Depp case, when no one else has ever had, people who are abusers don't only abuse one person their entire life. It's just, in my experience, it didn't happen. And it was the same pattern. In fact, it's how I learned to prove it in cases. I would say, you don't have to believe my client, Your Honor. I got the last 4 girlfriends he did it to. And is everybody making it up? And so, that's the way to do it. But 2 things I had. One was, I love the show Lie to Me. I was wondering how accurate it was, or maybe inaccurate it was. And second, why is Columbo such a favorite of you guys?
Okay. Let's go with Lie to Me first. Lie to Me is a TV show.
Paul Ekman.
But even he will tell that they would call him in, and my understanding of it is this, after looking into this, they'd say, okay, they had him on the set and they'd have the actor say something, untie him or unhandcuff him because of this eye movement. And he's like, well, hang on just a second. That's not the way that works. It's this, this, and this. And they say, okay. But then he would still go, unhandcuff him because of this eye movement. And they'd say, so if you were to ask him, he'd say, it's TV. And he'd say, yeah, but what about this, this, and this? It's TV. What? But they said it's not what you prove. It's TV. So I'm under the impression I've actually heard that's what he's told people, because I'd have people over and we'd watch it. And they'd all be going, hey man, what about this? And I was like, I don't know, so I tried for the longest time to get a hold of him. I never could do it. But then I found out that he actually told that to some people, he or someone, that it kind of upset him too, because it was TV. But I think he's come to feel okay about it. But it is TV, and it's got to be, even though it's based on Paul Ekman, a lot of body language experts' information is based on a study or studies. For example, the 738-55 rule of communication, where you hear them say, body language is communication is 7% the words you use, and 38% the tone of voice, and 55% the rest of it's body language, and that's 97%. Well, we know that. So when I heard that first, I heard that back in the 80s. I called him up. He was still at Berkeley. I think it was Berkeley. And I called him up and I said, hey, I'm hearing this thing and it doesn't sound right to me, because I've played charades before. I know I can tell you something a lot clearer. And Robert, there you go. With the way you speak and sentence structure, you'll understand as well. I can tell somebody something and get them that information a heck of a lot more than I can just show it to them. And, baby fish mouth. No, it's a human chicken person. No, it's, chicken. No, drawing stuff, or as you try to act something out. So it's not, that was totally wrong. And he said, listen, everybody you talk to, be sure you tell them that that's not what I'm saying. two studies put together, and somehow they've come up with this weird rule. And that was, 30 years ago or something. And I've emailed him a couple times back and forth since then to say, remember when I did this? He's like, yeah, okay. So just to make sure I'll get that in there. And then what was the second part? The second question.
Why Columbo?
Who is gospel?
Oh, because well, when I first met Chase, I met him through Eric, and Chase had said on the thing that he said, I have all the Columbo, the DVDs, or whatever, and I'm sitting there in mine or right over there. I was like, oh Lord, it's somebody that speaks the language of my people, Columbo. We just like him because it's the way it's set up. I know it's stories and it's characters, but once you get into, I'm always under the impression he knows who did it. As soon as he talks to him, he goes, okay, I got this one. And so he knows, and then goes from there. But it's all those little tactics you see that you see people use, but they're just blown up real big. So even as a little kid, you can see him go, hey, wait just a minute. Maybe I'll try that. I think he was a great actor, and I love that character. And I think the show was done really well. I just love it. Now it sounds horrible because I'm 57, but I still watch that thing.
And are there, I guess one last question. Are there any body language courses for criminals?
Well, the thing is, when they end up taking a body language course, I've actually talked to somebody where I went in and I can't give you all the details because I'll get in trouble, but they had taken a course and they were doing these things, but they were doing them wrong, And so I would say, and the first time I saw one, I was like, oh, I got me one here. For example, one of the things they were doing was mirroring. Because when I sat down, I had a pen and I scooted my pen over here and moved my coffee cup like that. And this guy did it too. And I was like, no way. And then he'd move something else, or I moved something else and he'd move something else. I was like, okay, here we go. Let's go. Let's get into this. So as it went forward, then I'd take a drink of my coffee. He'd take a drink of his coffee. I'd move my coffee cup. He'd move his. He was trying to match and mirror me, right? So finally, I take a drink of my coffee. I put my cup down. He takes a drink of his coffee, puts his cup down. I pick my cup up, and I spit my coffee back into the cup. He'd go, I said, what are you doing? What are you doing? I know you said to do so-and-so. I said, why did I say this? Where did I say that? So that's when he started. It's, well, I saw whatever it was. I said, dude, number one, I know you did this, like we talked about earlier, and all these things you show me, it shows me you're being more. He didn't just puked it up at that point. He was in trouble and knew it. But yeah, so.
And then that gets back to the expression, like, hating someone's guts. You get for someone who doesn't know what mirroring is, and you don't know why someone's doing something or even that they're doing it. But this gives people with a certain amount of EQ the heebie-jeebies when someone breathing with your pattern because they think it's trying to manipulate or convince you. It gives people the heebie-jeebies, which is why you just trust your instincts when it comes to these things, especially when it comes to, you can judge more people bad than good in the sense like you can avoid them because if you trust the wrong one, it's going to do a lot more damage than having not trusted the right one. But yeah, that's the type of, that would give me the heebie-jeebies.
Yeah, you have to when you match and mirror, people think it's, you go and you start doing what they start doing. You have to be cool about it. For example, let's say if I didn't know who Robert was, didn't know all the things that came with him, and I was trying to, and I just sat down, we were across from each other talking. I wouldn't just go like this. Hey man, what's going on? As we talked, I'd move around a little bit and I'd act like I was talking about something and give it one of those as we're going along. I might pick up my pen to be the same place as the guitar. If you scratch your face, I might not do anything. I might just move my arm a little bit. But as the further along we talked, the more I'd slowly move my way. And I go, oh, you got to be kidding me. And I'd get this going. Then I'd finally get to where I was look similar to you. And when you moved, I wouldn't move exactly when you moved because people pick that up, especially women. Like I said before, women, their brains are so much more powerful than ours when it comes to watching what's going on. They take in so much more information, so much more quickly than we do. So you really got to be careful with that. So it's just rehearsing it and getting, and you got to be cool about it, really cool about it. So that's the key to matching and mirroring.
All right. Well, fantastic. And this is a perfect place to match and mirror our way out of here. Everybody, seriously, thetruecrimeworkshop.com. Use the code unstructured. He's only going to leave it up there for a week or two. So, I mean, you need to hit it within a certain amount of time, preferably by year's end. I think it would be a fair thing. It's a 2020 deal, and hindsight's 2020. So if you get past it, you missed it. And everybody knows Viva and Barnes. You can't miss that on the tubes.
Everybody,
every week.
Not just to give a thumbs up to this video, but also to subscribe to Eric Hunley if you are not already subscribed.
I do.
Yeah. Fantastic. Thank you so much, everybody. Please do subscribe. Tomorrow, I've got Viva back to
I'm gonna
finally about the Supreme Court with Nate the lawyer. It's a showdown that's been flaring across Twitter for a while.
I'm going to relay Recchieta's gripes and Robert's position to Nate, and it'll be a fun discussion.
Fantastic. I'm really looking forward to it. It's going to be a great time. And guys, thank you so